One of the questions I tend to ponder is, what is strength? What makes a protagonist strong and why? I tend to think of Goblin Slayer as an example of a protagonist being strong, cold, and calculated by being able to effectively kill the goblins that terrorize his world. He's self-sufficient and not dependent on anybody but himself, and ends up persevering against goblins regardless of the circumstances. Or even Guts from Berserk being strong due to his brutal past and upbringing, and having to overcome many circumstances of trauma and being able to move forward. These two men are often seen as the prime example of strength in anime, and for very good reasons. However, I would like to challenge our perception on strength, and what we interpret as weak. When we look at Subaru Natsuki, he's objectively useless in a combat situation, and when it comes to being intelligent, he's also pretty useless. We see Subaru for the first time as a useless idiot being beaten down by his environment and his circumstances. He is constantly dying due to his lack of intuition and intelligence and being physically weak. On top of that, having a hero complex when he has no real way of saving anyone, including himself. On my first watch of ReZero, I quickly came to that conclusion. I thought to myself, this guy is really the main character. What a joke. However, I couldn't be more wrong. When I think of Subaru Natsuki, I can't help but compare him to Okabe Rintarou from Steins. I mean, a way more idiotic version, but still. Subaru and Okabe share a lot more commonalities than I realized. They both don't understand the consequences of their actions until it was too late. Both were very stubborn and foolish when originally trying to fix their problems. Both were trying to save someone they care about more than anything, willing to even kill themselves to save them. Both Okabe and Subaru become more anxious in the process, despite more desperate to succeed each time they return to a previous time point. Both Okabe and Subaru are cursed to relive their failures over and over again. The beauty of time is being able to progress and accept certain past situations, and being able to change your perception based off your experiences. Neither Okabe or Subaru have to do that, since they literally warp time and space itself to achieve what they have set their mind to. The core commonality between these two, however, is their perseverance beyond all circumstances. Okabe never gave up to save Mayuri, despite suffering every single failure doing so. Seeing her life flash before his eyes was something he got used to. With Subaru, it's the exact same thing for Emilia and Ren. Subaru gradually becomes more conditioned to his cruel and unforgiving environment he was forcibly put in, only to suffer in many failures. Subaru even pondered what life would be like if he gave up saving everyone, by marrying Rem, which was explained in episode 18. Rem, however, rejects the narrative and says that Subaru would never forgive himself if he did give up. Rem also states that that was not the man she fell in love with, but the Subaru that never gave up. So why do I bring up the commonalities between Subaru and Rintarou? Well, I find Okabe to be very strong as a character. Now, many of us would be like, well, what do you mean he's strong? Well, I want to kind of touch on a lot of things that I find that make him very strong as a main character. A lot of the pain and suffering that Okabe has been going through was the result of his reading Steiner, and the constant traveling back in time is kept hidden beneath the surface. Yet every so often it breaks through the surface and bursts out into a breathtaking display of raw emotion for the character. These few times that Okabe broke down brought me so much closer to the character as a viewer, and really helped me empathize with his struggle and suffering. These major moments include Okabe's conversation with Kurisu on how many times he's tried to save Mayuri, and his fight with Mooka towards the last arc of the show. The amount of mental torment that Okabe went through to fight against space and time itself to find the correct timeline in which Mayuri lives is quite literally immeasurable. I find in a lot of media and anime that mental strength is often ignored or even undervalued grossly. Let's go back to Argball, the protagonist of Goblin Slayer. We know that he was the only survivor of his household when he was a child. His sister was slaughtered, leaving him alone. This possibly stunted his mental and emotional development due to losing the person serving as a parent and gaining a far less caring mentor. We can see this in the way he acts around others. Poor social interactions, less interest in one's image and appearance, obsessive, and possibly showing ritualistic behavior. His sister taught him the basic skills in living and caring for himself and others, but he wasn't of age to be considered an actual adult when he lost his family. Due to him surviving a traumatic experience and dealing with it by declaring a one-man extermination war against a seamlessly endless foe marks him as having post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of the well-documented symptoms of PTSD are hypervigilance, social isolation, and self-destructive behavior, which fits him quite perfectly. This, however, is not very well brushed upon in the anime. A lot of the characters look up to him because he knows what he's doing against goblins, and that's understandable, of course, but it seems like they're not really getting to how he knows all this. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, and I'm not an expert on any of this. However, it seems like all the evidence points towards the fact that he does suffer from a lot of this trauma and a lot of the post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. Now, presenting you with all this information, I'd like to pose a question. Is Archbalg strong, or is he weak? A lot of people would say, well, he's physically strong, his intelligence is quite high, however mentally quite underdeveloped, which you could even classify as a weakness. I would like to pose another question. Is Subaru strong or weak? I would say he's physically weak and kind of stupid, but he does have his moments. But I would also say that he's mentally very strong and determined. After Subaru's deaths and constant dying over and over again, he never stops to realize what he's actually doing. He keeps going on this path and wanting to save everyone, regardless of the circumstances. He's quite literally the most selfless character I've seen in quite a long time. He plays the hero when he really doesn't need to. He's not playing the hero out of some sort of high glory or self-satisfaction, but just wanting to save the people that he truly cares about. And that's something a lot of people don't seem to realize when they first watch ReZero. They expect this kid to be the next hero Ikesai sort of protagonist that's physically strong, gets the girls, you know, just the kind of the generic shonen protagonist, when it's almost exactly the opposite. The only thing that shines personally with Subaru is that he's able to march on when everything is stacked against him. And the only time he does stop in the show is when he's mentally broken as a human being, which is kind of incredible if you think about it. I would just like you to think about putting yourself in Subaru's shoes for like maybe 1 to 2 minutes. Think about going to a new world, expecting a different life, probably a better life, and everything that's happened to Subaru is now going to happen to you. I want you to just think about what you would do after everything that's happened. You lose tons of connections with people from them just dying. You're trying to save them, but the only way you can is literally killing yourself. It's just mental torture. And I think a lot of people underappreciate or undervalue the amount of mental torture that Subaru have to go through in order to survive. Like, of course we can value physical strength, as we always did, but I just wish people would also highlight how relatable of a character Subaru really is, and how he's a testament to the cruel world that we face in our everyday lives. Or that you need to be seen as this person that kills all these creatures or saves the girl constantly in order to be seen as a strong character. I think that true strength comes from within. Thank you for watching the video.